Super Mario 3D World is obviously another phenomenal entry in the 3D Mario franchise. This is a game that I've always enjoyed, but not necessarily one I've appreciated for its level design until my most recent playthrough. I always viewed 3D World as a multiplayer co-op adventure, and it felt like a title that was meant to be played in that manner. And although I have dabbled in my occasional casual single-player playthrough of the title, both on my Wii U and on the Switch, I would almost vastly prefer playing every other 3D Mario title if I'm going at it alone. And with good reason. 4-player co-op for a 3D Mario game is not really the norm, and the levels designed for this game are wide and zoomed out, allowing for plenty of space and accommodation for you and your friends to go on this adventure. And quite frankly, it's a phenomenal time, especially in the right setting, with the right group of people. But that's the thing, I've always had that right setting, I've had the right group of people, I've had my main circle of friends that I game with. Whether it's our random multiplayer party game or the new Super Mario Bros. Series, we've gone through these experiences and completed them in a fun and sometimes even unhealthy competitive manner. I strongly debated bringing the group together for this video. In my mind, the best way to give Mario 3D World a fighting chance to rank amongst the best of the 3D Mario games was for me to analyze it in what I thought was the way in which it was meant to be played, that being the 4-player co-op run. But the reality is, I don't need to play the game like that again. I've already done so, and it is amazing. Also, getting 4 people in their 20s and 30s together to try to run through an adventure that would take up to 20 hours is not really ideal today. So I decided I'm just gonna go at this alone and analyze it the same way I've analyzed every other 3D Mario prior to this one. But I came into the title with preconceived notions. I came into the title with expectations that had already been set by previous games as well as previous playthroughs of 3D World. And in case you haven't kept up with the entirety of my 3D Mario Deep Dive series over the last year, I want to quickly summarize my feelings and conclusions that I developed after going through those titles, specifically from the angle of the stage design as well as the objective locations. Starting off with Super Mario 64. While yes, the stages in the game, especially at the surface, seem like a giant open sandbox, due to how the stages and objectives themselves are actually designed, most of the objectives in that title feel like direct linear pathways, which could honestly be ripped out of Mario 64 and placed into a linear 3D Mario adventure. There are still tons of stars that do require a lot of searching or problem solving, but many of them are also directly on a linear path, and it's very obvious in the direction that you're meant to go. And as you move along those directions, it provides that experience, that platforming experience. This would vary in comparison to something like Banjo-Kazooie or even Donkey Kong 64, in which the focus of the design of those stages is a lot less on the actual platforming and more on the search itself. Mario 64, at almost no point in time, does not feel like a platformer. It always does. And it does a fairly good job at it once you get used to the controls at least. Now Super Mario Sunshine takes this a step even further. When you played Super Mario 64, the stars that required searching or platforming or puzzle solving, they for the most part started off the exact same way, and it did require you to follow a path and figure out where you needed to go. Mario Sunshine, through most of the base game, the main objectives that are required to complete the title, removes the element of the open-ended search, instead replacing it with episodic objectives, where you know exactly where you need to go and more or less the path that's needed to be taken to get there. And while yes, the stages in those games once again are giant sandboxes, the pathways that you're meant to follow in order to get to those shine sprites do feel like a linear 3D Mario stage, and they feel like they could be inside a linear 3D Mario game, with the ultimate linear platforming tests being in the hidden area shines. Even the 100 coin collection shines feel more like a platforming challenge in most of the stages than an open-ended search. As a matter of fact, I went through most of Super Mario Sunshine not feeling like I was experiencing just a general search like I did in Mario 64, until I started to collect all of the blue coins, which made Sunshine feel like the primary objective was the action platforming that was found with the shine sprites, and the open-ended treasure hunt was done with the blue coins. So the main objective was just the linear platformer, and the full completion was the scavenger hunt. Mario 64 very much felt like that too, but this was a lot more defined, the shine sprites and the blue coins. After that, it went even a step further with Super Mario Galaxy, where now the open-ended search was pretty much completely taken out of the game, only really showing up in a few rare moments. But this was brought back with Super Mario Galaxy 2. The additional green stars that were unlocked after completing the game turns the game into more of a scavenger hunt where you have to spend a lot more time going through these linear stages looking for that objective. And just like in Mario Sunshine, it made the green star hunt one of the most enjoyable aspects of the game for me. Now in the case of Super Mario 3D Land, each stage did have star medals to find, but it often never felt like a hunt to look for those star medals. Not as much as the green stars in Mario Galaxy 2. These star medals are very fun and they make 3D Land a much better experience when you're going for all of them, but the fun part is trying to collect them along your way rather than trying to find them, with the challenge more often than not being figuring out how to grab them rather than where to find them. These challenges made Super Mario 3D Land one of my favorite 3D Mario titles altogether, because of how much they focused on the challenge when it comes to the actual platforming itself. Now in fairness, it takes a while to get there because the first 8 levels of the stage can be run through pretty easily without a thought, especially if you're a 3D Mario veteran, but that full completion experience is one that will give you a challenge at least the first time you try it. And that's primarily because they do a pretty good job finding ways to make the star medal hunt enticing. Now I figured that Mario 3D World was just going to be like Mario 3D Land without the strong focus on the platforming. I figured going into these levels that are much better designed with much more flashy characters, the world feeling more alive, with plenty of real estate for you and your friends, that I would go into this title as a single player experience, and the only thought I would have is that it's just way too easy, too boring to an extent. Quite frankly, that's how I felt about Mario Galaxy in any of my most recent playthroughs. And I think if somebody's goal is to just head to the flagpole in every single stage in Mario 3D World, that is the case. It is actually, for the most part, mind-numbingly boring and very oversimplified, with a lot of the enjoyment being the charm of the levels rather than the actual design. This is in contrast to Super Mario Galaxy 2, for example, where the stages were a lot more challenging and kept you on your toes in order to get to the end of every objective. But unlike Super Mario Galaxy 2, there is a green star challenge in this game as well, but they are actually in the stages as you go through the level. They are not final objectives, they are collectible MacGuffins along your way in the same way that the star medal was in Super Mario 3D Land. But where in Super Mario 3D Land, the question was more how to grab the coin rather than where to find it, in 3D World, thanks to the vast size of these stages, it's about where the stars are located. There are 3 green stars in every level, and each one of them is hidden fairly well, I would say. And quite frankly, if you're somebody that wanted an open-ended 3D Mario game that doesn't kick you out after you grab every single star, 3D World kind of does that, except the stages are just not an open sandbox. They're a very long, linear, wide hallway. So as a player that's looking for full completion, and as a player that refuses to move on to the next stage unless I grab every MacGuffin in the one that I'm currently playing, Super Mario 3D World felt like a collectathon as much as the best of the collectathons in the genre. I'm not kidding. I had a blast running through 3D World, and it is mainly because I was looking for the green stars along the way. Now, there's still fun to have playing this as if it's a typical linear 3D Mario game where you're trying to get through it as fast as you can, but like I said before, due to how vast the stages are and how they're meant to accommodate 4 players on there at once, the platforming just feels oversimplified in a lot of ways. Speedrunners can definitely find ways to make it more exciting, but then again, speedrunners can find ways to make anything more exciting. But Super Mario 3D World for me felt a lot more in line with how it felt when I went through Super Mario Bros. 2, and it's more than just the option to choose between those same 4 characters. Right, that was like one of the big deals of this game when it came out. It was going to be the 4 players, and it was the same 4 from Super Mario Bros. 2. Mario, Luigi, Toad, and Peach. Mario's an all-arounder, Luigi can jump a little bit higher than Mario, but he's a bit slipperier, Toad's fast, but he fails at verticality, and Peach has her hover, which usually makes me pick Peach more than any of the other characters. I did spend most of this game choosing a random character before every stage just so I can kind of mix it up a bit, otherwise I knew I would continuously go back to Peach. And you can still get through the entire game with every one of the characters available, but some of them are kind of broken in the Switch version of this title. For some reason, when they re-released this game, they made it so that the characters were 20 to 30% faster. And while it might break a few moments, I do think it's a lot more fun because of it. The game does have a run button, and honestly, I think Toad is so fast that you probably can get through the entire game without using the run button if you're playing as Toad. And I don't know, I feel like I just always enjoyed this one more specifically because it was faster. I actually did go back and forth about whether I'd be playing 3D World on the Wii U or on the Switch for this video, and I opted for the Switch version just because statistically statistically speaking, if you're somebody that's watching this video, you are more likely to have played the Switch version than the Wii U one. But anyway, the characters themselves are not the only reason 3D World reminded me so much of Super Mario Bros. 2. See, my experience with Super Mario Bros. 2 wasn't on the NES, nor was it on the SNES. It was actually on the Game Boy Advance. The Game Boy Advance was unique in that it added a red coin hunt in every stage. The red coin hunt in Super Mario Bros. 2 makes the full completion experience that much more enjoyable. It gives you a reason to explore some of these giant 2D levels in Super Mario Bros. 2, and it gives this linear platformer a feeling of being a collectathon. The same goes for Super Mario 3D World with the green stars. The levels are fine, they're fun to look at, the music is charming, the characters are well animated, but the green stars laid out in this game allow you the chance to search every nook and cranny and really appreciate what went into this title, just like the red coins did in Super Mario Bros. 2. Now, if you've seen my previous retrospectives, you know how this is going to move. I'm going to tackle this game on a world-by-world basis. Each world will get its own segments, and in each of those segments, I will analyze the levels laid out as well as how well hidden the green stars are in each of those stages. I've gone through every single collectible MacGuffin in all of the previous 3D Mario games, and that's going to be no different here. If you're somebody that prefers watching the compilation in a single video once I'm all done the entire adventure, then check out my alt channel Nintendo Plus because the full video will be there at the very end. But for now, I plan on uploading the videos on this main channel. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be daily, but I do want to move along this one pretty quickly because there are some other games that I really want to cover, and this one's taken me way too long to wrap up. With all that being said, pick your favorite character and meet me at World 1.